My name is Dolores Canales, and I'm a commissioner on the Probation Oversight Commission for the county's Probation Oversight Commission. Oh, sorry. We are recording this meeting and it will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel and our website. So please encourage folks to check it out, even if they've missed the live meeting this evening. The commission is a civilian oversight body that monitors the probation department's progress on systemic reform and advises the county's board of supervisors. Engaging the public through regular meetings and direct testimony is critical to our work. So we are pleased to host this session tonight to create a forum to learn about the realities of electronic monitoring. We will have a question and answer session after the panelists speak. To participate in that, we would prefer that you send your question in the chat to the host, or you can use the raise your hand function, and we will call on you. Since this is not a meeting governed by the Brown Act, we won't have a timer, and we may ask that you be brief if we are running out of time. We look forward to a profound and respectful conversation tonight and ask you to respect each other and speak from personal experience, not for others. Wendy, do you want to make a quick comment about the translation?
Yes, thank you. And also I'll say when we get to the point where we're making public comment, if you're calling in on the phone and you want to ask a question, you need to dial *3. Use the little raise your hand function if you're on the computer or on a smartphone, but *3 will raise your hand if you're on the phone. Buenas tardes, bienvenidos. Hemos iniciado ya la conferencia por WebEx y invitamos a los miembros de la comunidad que prefieren hacer sus comentarios en español. Si quiere hacer su comentario en español, lo puede escribir en el chat y se lo traducimos a los panelistas para que contesten. O si está llamando por teléfono o quiere levantar su mano, yo le puedo traducir o usted puede proveer su propio traductor. Le llamamos por su nombre cuando sea su turno. Ya es todo. I'll give it back to you, Dolores. Bienvenidos.
Okay, thank you. So we have a wonderful panel of deeply informed experts, including scholars, activists, and people with lived experience. Isabel Gatesy from the Bail Project is going to moderate the panel today. Before I turn it over to them, I'd like to share some brief comments to frame the conversation. Electronic monitoring is a form of monitoring that uses technology to monitor someone pre-trial or post-sentence who is released from custody and placed on house arrest. It involves using a tamper-resistant, GPS-equipped ankle or wrist device to track, record, and analyze the location of people. Authorities often point to electronic monitoring as an effective alternative to incarceration, which would be great, yet there is no data to confirm this. It is our job as the Probation Oversight Commission to learn about issues impacting people on probation and ask the difficult questions. We want to promote transparency and accountability from the department and make sure that the department is fully embracing the Board of Supervisors' Care First, Jails Last. You'll hear tonight about how electronic monitoring can be another form of incarceration, known as e-carceration, infringing on privacy and normal life and adding to the cycle of poverty by resulting in job loss and housing instability, and that it contributes to re-incarceration for technical violations. So as you can see, this is a complex issue. And as you all know, people with lived experience and even advocates are not a homogeneous group. And we have many varying opinions about these complex topics. Tonight, we are going to hear a few and engage in a rich conversation. I hope that our dialogue can help shed light on potential solutions that can inform reform efforts. Please know that since today's meeting is not a regular public meeting, we will not be taking any action tonight. However, this topic will be on the agenda on our August 10th Probation Oversight Commission meeting. So please join us virtually or in person for that meeting to hear more from the full commission and data from probation. I also want to thank our panelists in advance, particularly those who will share their personal stories, for their courage and their advocacy. Isabel, welcome, and I'll go ahead and turn over the meeting to you now, and you can start with introductions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dolores. And thank you as well to the POC for hosting this topic and inviting this important conversation. We're grateful to be here tonight, especially as the use of EM is increasing, with less known about the efficacy of its use. A study by the Criminal Justice Program at UCLA Law actually analyzed data from 2015 to 2021 and found an increase in the use of electronic monitoring in a pretrial context by 5,250%. In 2021, 5 times as many people were placed on electronic monitoring pre-trial than were placed on it post-conviction. And to put the increase of electronic monitoring's use in perspective, on July 18th, 2021, so 2 years ago, there were a total of 424 people on electronic monitoring in LA County. In contrast, this month, on July 18th, 2023, there were 1,134 people on electronic monitoring in LA County. That's a 167% increase in electronic monitoring use over the past 2 years. And that includes both pretrial and post-conviction electronic monitoring. And EM can set people up to be put back in jail for technical violations, like failing to maintain the charge of their device or returning home 5 minutes after their curfew. And in fact, 94% of people who were terminated from one of the programs here in Los Angeles were terminated for noncompliance, not because they had a new arrest or were unreachable. People are also spending a lot of time on EM. A majority of people on pretrial EM are spending a median of at least 65 to 71 days on EM while awaiting trial, with 1/3 of people spending at least over 6 months on electronic monitoring. Data also shows that EM does not ensure an individual's return to court, and nor does it decrease the likelihood of new arrest. Statistics and numerical evidence can be helpful in informing decisions, but so too is the lived experience of those who have actually been placed on a monitor and lived their lives while wearing the monitor. Today, we have a panel of 3 speakers who will be discussing more in depth the impact EM has had on their lives. It takes a lot of courage to share one story, so we ask that everyone here show their support and respect as our speakers share. It's a pleasure to introduce our 3 speakers, Sheila Nat, Emmett Sanders, and Anthony Robles. Sheila, growing up in Compton, defied the statistical assumptions of who a Black girl from Compton was supposed to be. Having been placed on an electronic monitor as a teenager, Sheila overcame this challenging experience and was still able to move forward with her life, not allowing that moment to define her character. Today, she works as a commercial liability adjuster, owns a successful business, and sets aside time to volunteer in her community. Sheila is also a mother to a wonderful college student and the adoptive aunt to her niece. Anthony Robles is a statewide organizer with Dignity and Power Now in Los Angeles. He has direct experience with electronic monitoring surveillance and is currently working with Care First California to end pretrial incarceration and surveillance. Previously, Anthony played an instrumental role in developing Los Angeles County's Department of Youth Development. And Emmett Sanders is a critically impacted researcher, advocate, author, and co-author of several publications, including Cages Without Bars, Pretrial Electronic Monitoring Across the United States. His previous work as project researcher on media justice's Challenging Incarceration and Unshackling Freedom campaigns focused on the ever-expanding use of electronic monitoring in immigration and criminal legal systems, and the disproportionate and devastating impacts of EM on those caught in these systems. He recently took on a new role with the Prison Policy Initiative as their policy and advocacy associate. And now, after having the pleasure of introducing everyone, I would love to turn to our panel and start at the top. Let's start with telling us how you're doing today, and then please tell us a bit about your experience with electronic monitoring. And I will pass it to Emmett.
Hi everyone. I'm doing quite well today. I'm in the process of moving, and so I'm a little frazzled. But other than that, I'm doing well. So I'll just get right into it. So I've had a rather complicated relationship with electronic monitoring, in that I've directly experienced it, but I've also worked on the issues of electronic monitoring as a researcher and as an advocate for a number of years now. So in terms of direct experience, I spent 3 months on electronic monitoring as a condition of my release after spending more than 22 years incarcerated in prison in Illinois. So I was incarcerated when I was 18 years old, and the entire time that I was there, the only thing that I could think about was getting home to my family, being there for them like I couldn't be when I was incarcerated, and building a life and moving forward. But when I came home in December 2016, at the age of 41, I discovered that EM meant that I was bringing the prison home with me. And so I don't know what the thinking was behind saddling someone with electronic monitoring when they're coming home. Maybe it's that they think that it will help people transition back into society by providing guardrails or guidance or something like that. But it's not at all the case. So for me, I spent the first 3 months of my life as a free citizen for the first time in decades, having every move not just monitored, but restricted and restrained in ways that made absolutely no sense and actually actively interfered with me reconnecting with my family or positively constructing life. And so my work with EM emerged from this experience and the realization that regardless of the narratives out there about EM as a tool of systemic reform, an alternative to incarceration, it's an alternative form of incarceration. It's depicted as recreating freedom, but what it does is actually recreates the harm of incarceration in the home, and it introduces into the lives of your family and your loved ones. And so for the past several years, largely with media justice challenging incarceration and shackling freedom campaigns, a lot of my work as a research advocate is focused on the proliferation and expansion of VM in these various systems that we mentioned earlier. And there's a narrative out there about all the things that electronic monitoring can do in terms of public safety and compliance and as a humane reform and all this, even though, as mentioned, like there's literally not one shred of evidence that that's actually what it does to support these claims. And so my work is actually centered on the data that exists that we don't really talk about. And that's the data that comes from people's lived experience, my experience, and Anthony and Sheila's and other folks as well. Because we are the people who are least positioned to actually impact these EM policies, but we're the ones who are most heavily impacted by them. And so that's my relationship with electronic monitoring. It's overwhelmingly negative. And so I'll turn it back to Isabel. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmett. Sheila, would you like to go next?
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Sheila Nat. And yeah, I guess I'll just jump into it. I was 15 when I had my experience on electronic monitoring, and I was confused. I didn't know. I actually didn't know what was going on, from court to being told that I was gonna be on an electronic monitor, and I had to wear it to school, and I was allowed to participate. I was on drill team in my high school, so I was allowed to participate in the football games. It was football season, and so I was able to go and attend and still be a part of. But it was really embarrassing. I was really just embarrassed because I'm a really, really girly girl. And so I didn't, wear a lot of tennis shoes. I wore a lot of dress shoes, heels, and um, dresses, skirts type of things. But it was just like this big monitoring thing and I had to explain it, to my friends at school, and it was just a real big inconvenience. At the time, my mom, we couldn't afford a house phone, so I couldn't stay at home. I had to stay at my aunt's house because she had a house phone. And so I wasn't able to be with my mom or my brothers. Um, I wasn't able to be in the own comfort of my home, my own bed. My aunt had boys, all boys, which are my cousins, and I love them, but it was still no girl privacy. And during those teenage years at 15, it's really crucial. Um, just the entire just experience was crazy. One day, I remember my mom coming up to the school to get me because she got some notification or something that I wasn't at school, but I was at school. Um, and so that almost caused me to get in more trouble. But thank God that my assistant principal in my school and my teachers, everybody was able to verify that I was in school that day. I was just afraid, from what I was told, that if I'm somewhere that I'm not supposed to be, that the police would, like a swarm of police would show up. So I was always looking over my shoulders, like, oh my gosh, what what if, anything happens? And of course, something like this, back then, it with technology wasn't as wasn't as advanced as it is now. So, and with me knowing little bit about the whole monitoring thing, I never knew, you know, when it would go off or what could set it off, or, if I made it in 1 second late, what would happen? From what I knew, it was that if I did anything or was out past a certain time, or anything could set it off, I would just be met with officers. Like, the helicopter can come, a swarm of police can come. So that was really nerve-wracking for me, because I just never knew, and at 15, to think that you can do, anything could go wrong, and you know police can just show up and just surround you at any given time was really scary for me. Like I said, a lot of the stuff wasn't really explained. I didn't understand why I had to be on the monitor. To be honest, I didn't even understand none of the process. I know that um, I got into a disagreement at school, and next thing I know, it turned into the school police coming to get me. And then they're taking me to Van Nuys police station, and some guy walking in a room asking me questions. He wasn't in a uniform or anything. So I did what I saw on television. I asked for an attorney. I didn't know what to say, what to do. You just do whatever you see on TV, especially if you're not used to, being in situations like that. And I was just labeled as this, just because I asked that, like I was some kind of criminal, because I asked what I think any kid would, like if you're somewhere and you're at a police station, I expected to see someone in a uniform, and I didn't. And then even like through the whole court process, I never met with an attorney. Of course, my mom didn't understand what was going on. And I guess ignorance, is an excuse, but she didn't know. It's just, we're black, black kids in LA, so if you're labeled one way, or if the police is involved, everybody is immediately afraid. And, we just listen to whatever, the officers are saying, or whatever charges they're putting on you. And honestly, it really has affected me throughout my life. I'm 43 and I was 15, but I still had to, explain why, this part of my life happened. And I didn't know to get my record expunged, so that wouldn't show up. But I got a job as a flight attendant. And when my background came in that incident for me being 15, and even though I wrote letters and I appealed everything, they made their own decision, and I'm 43 and hadn't been into anything. So um, that has followed me through my life, and it's an experience that I'll never forget. I just felt, lost, confused, not knowing, scared, frightened because I don't know if the police is going to show up and get me, if the monitor says I'm wrong, or what if I, what if I didn't do anything and they showed up, would they believe me? Through my whole experience, it was just, I wasn't able to say anything. I didn't have a voice. And I understand that everybody's situation could be different, but for somebody that's in high school, that's never been in trouble with the law, that's never been suspended from school, had good grades, and had so many, my like I said, my assistant principal, she came down and she spoke up for me. My teachers are willing to speak up for me, but it was like my voice wasn't heard. This is the sentence they put on me, and I just had to live with it. So that's my experience. And thank you all for letting me share it.
Thank you for being here, Sheila. I'll pass it over to Anthony. Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with electronic monitoring?
Yeah, thank you for Emmett and Sheila for sharing. My experience was not too long ago, actually. It was just a couple years, like 2 years ago or so, and I was actually put on electronic monitoring, GPS surveillance, uh, as I was going to court for a case. So it was pre-trial, and I had suffered a car accident, and I had actually broke both my legs, and so I was actually being my mom was caretaking me, and so I was pretty incapacitated. I was in the middle of recovery. Uh, I was, and when something like that happens to you, your life is starting over, and you're kind of just. It's almost like I was in jail. Because I was literally stuck on my parents' couch. I was staying with my parents. My mom was taking care of me. Um, and I couldn't do anything for myself. Like my mom would literally bring me my toothbrush every morning so I could brush my teeth, because I couldn't get off the couch. And many more hygienic things that we had to do that I won't say here, but like it was a tough experience, and the toughest thing I ever went through in my life. And as I was going to court, uh, I went to court and they could see that I'm incapacitated, that I can't walk, and they still, for the case, they still put me on ankle monitoring, electronic monitoring. I don't know why. I think it was an overreach because I couldn't leave if I wanted to. I couldn't walk, I couldn't run, and I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. And I don't think nobody would escape me to Mexico or something and then have to take care of me, an injured person like that. So it was definitely an overreach. And at the time I was going to physical therapy for my broken legs, and I was getting stretched and all that. When they slapped that ankle monitor on me, I stopped going to physical therapy, because I was embarrassed and I was ashamed, and I was like, what are they gonna think when they see this big bracelet on my ankle? And so I stopped going, and then that really hindered the progress in my recovery during that time. And so um, I feel like that's that's a that kind of situation. I wasn't expecting that, but I feel like that type of situation is like the type of things that we say can happen, and they do happen, and it happened to me. Ankle monitoring literally stopped me from recovering from from very debilitating injuries. And so I think like people have to really think about what these ankle monitors are doing to people. And I heard it might have been, I think Wendy actually was in our check-ins before this started. You said, like you've come across people on electronic monitoring during immigration, and the thing, like these ankle monitors are being used and the surveillance is being tested on people without rights. That includes immigrants and convicted people, or people going through due process, but your rights are still kind of limited, even though that's supposed to be. Um, so So I think people need to look like, I think we all grew up with like these dystopian movies like 1984 and these other things. And that's what we're living in. You know, we had the technology to do that, to watch every single move that you're doing. And all of my movements were being watched. And I wasn't moving. I was literally not coming out of my parents' house at that time. And luckily I wasn't on house arrest. But even if I was, I would have been good because I wasn't leaving the house. I was just being monitored, my GPS location and probably my audio. Um, and when I went into the sheriff's department to get this ankle monitor slapped on, there was a guy in there who was arguing with the sheriff saying that he hasn't, because he was actually on house arrest. And he's like, I haven't left the area. And he's saying the GPS is saying you were over here at this time. And they were like, not arguing, but he was like defending himself against the sheriff. And I was like, oh my God, this better not happen to me because I could leave my house, even though I couldn't. I could leave my house. I couldn't leave the county and I couldn't leave the state. So imagine if this thing said that I was like in Nevada or something, I don't know, or Mexico or whatever, and then now I'm getting in trouble. So I seen that when I was about to get mine slapped on, and I was like, oh my God. But while I was there too, getting it slapped on, I was thinking about all the fees I have to pay, and I'm probably, I don't know, probably Sheila. I'm pretty sure Sheila, because you're in LA. Emma probably had to pay fees to wear it, and that used to be the case in California. And in 20, I can't remember the year, like in 2019 or 2020, I worked with the Debt Free Justice Coalition on a bill that ended all criminal justice related fees in California. And so when I went to go get this ankle monitor slapped on, there was a big notice in the sheriff's department that said, uh, you are no longer being charged to wear our ankle monitors due to, I already forgot the number, but it was just, and I was like, holy crap, I did that. I forgot I did that because I was going through my own personal thing, and I was like, it was kind of like a full circle moment, and it made me realize like the impact that our work is actually having on people because the work that I do impacted myself, and so that was kind of like a special moment for me seeing that. I have a picture of it of that notice. So, but previous to like 2 years ago, you would get charged like I don't even know like 30, 50, 40, 100, I don't know, dollars a month to wear that, or I don't know, but I don't want to exaggerate it and also don't want to under exaggerate it. So, but you would have to get charged just to wear that thing and be surveilled. And then lastly, and I don't want to talk too much, but lastly, a couple, like in 2019, I went to Oakland for a little gathering of people from across the country that were talking about electronic monitoring. And there was one guy, I forgot where he was from, but he said his son was put on electronic monitoring, and he went to his friend's house, and him and his friends were talking, and I don't know what they were talking about or what they mentioned, but the next day, the cops raided his friend's house because they heard them over talking on his ankle monitor. So I think it just shows like the net widening of the surveillance is also affecting people who aren't going through the system. And that's this dystopian future that we're talking about. That's the 1984 is already here. If they're using the ankle monitors to come after people who aren't even going through the system or going to court, but it's because somebody else is wearing it. Now it's just showing the net widening of the surveillance, and that should worry us all. That should worry every single one of us, because they're experimenting this stuff on immigrants and convicted people, and it's not right. And if people aren't fighting back, you're gonna lose. I heard a saying the other day that was like said the advent of the internet was like the elimination of privacy, and we got to get our privacy back. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Um, the next question I'd like to ask all of you is if you can each speak, a bit more in the last question. Some of you mentioned how your day-to-day life was impacted, but I'm wondering now if each of you can speak just a bit more about how your day-to-day life was impacted by wearing the monitor. And, in answering this question, maybe draw on experience with how constrained maybe your movements and activities were while you were on the monitor, if and whether you had to get permission to attend work or school, what that process was like, maybe how your family life or housing security was impacted, or your mental or physical well-being. All those are relevant here. So we'll start again with Emmett, and then go to Sheila, and then finish with Anthony.
Well, again, like I said, for me, electronic monitoring was less a stepping stone back into society than it was a stone around my neck. It impacted every single aspect of my life, and it did it in a negative way. So when I first came home, I was given 4 hours of movement 3 times a week. That's 12 hours per week to try to find a job and keep it. To go shopping. Again, I came home when I was 41 years old. I left when I was 18. I needed clothes and all of these things that you need just to exist in this world. I didn't have, and so that time was supposed to do that. I was supposed to find a way to reconnect with my family, get identification, get all these things, find housing, all of these other things that you need to do to actually survive in this world within 4-hour chunks 3 times a week. Um, and and as Sheila mentioned earlier, there's a constant fear. You have a constant fear of this hanging over your head. So when I did get a job, I was terrified that I was going to miss the bus, and not make it home and get violated, or that I would be in a car and the car would break down and I would get violated. I go back to prison for it, or once my wife actually moved the box by accident, moved the box that was plugged into the wall that was set up to respond to this thing, and unplugged it. And when that did, we both sat there and waited to find out whether or not the person I love had inadvertently sent me back to prison. There's this constant state of fear that you live in. It is ever present and it's always there. And to that, it's not just you, and this is to Anthony's point too, it's not just you that is impacted by these things, right? It's everyone everyone you love, everyone who's in the home with you. These things they turn your family members into prisoners and into wardens because they're required in some places to say whether or not you're there, to keep track of you, to monitor you as an agent of the state. And so that's there as well, right? How you're trying to reconnect with your family, and there is this ever-present thing where they're the ones who are supposed to be keeping track of you. It creates this power imbalance and makes it very, very difficult to sort of reunify. Um, and I think it's, if I talk about the day-to-day things, I think it's tough to really try to explain what it's like to uh, put a bread bag around your leg and stick it outside the shower because you're afraid to get this thing wet. Um, or or what it's like I get married. I get married in the courthouse, and I had the electronic monitor strapped to my leg. And the day that I went to get married, I had to lift up my pant leg and show everyone there this modern day scarlet letter that's sitting on my leg. And so there's this constant reinforcement of shame and this constant reinforcement of fear that happens that these things bring up. Um, and again, just for me, the thing that really comes to mind that really stands out in terms of, and this is day to day. This is not an individual moment or a feeling. This is every single day that you experience this. And the thing that stands out for me was just the barrier that this thing imposed between myself and the people that I love. My mother waited 22 years for me to come home. Waited 22 years for me to come home. And she told me over and over that the only thing that she really wanted to do was take a walk down the street with me. Um, and so I come home and I have this thing on my leg and I can't do that. Can't do these basic things. Or be at somebody's bedside when they're sick, or attend any kind of family events, or any of these things that you were supposed to do as a human being to connect with the people that you love and with your community and with society as a whole. And so I think the things that I remember most from the day to day are the constant state of fear, the shame, really, and the way that it just disconnected me from everyone.
Thank you, Emmett. Sheila?
Hey guys again. As far as my day-to-day life, I was in, like I said, I was in school. So, and I didn't take a school bus, I took the city bus. So, like Emmett was saying, when you're afraid that you're going to miss the bus, you know, you know, you don't know if you're going to make it home in time, or I didn't know if, you know, 'cause sometimes you do miss the bus. And if I missed the bus, I would have to walk home and long distance. But, you know, it's something that I would do because, you know, if I'm not home by a certain time, what's going to happen? Or if I'm on the bus and, you know, the bus doesn't make it, you know, to my home in time, would they surround the bus? You know, everybody's already prejudging me because they see this kid, you know, with an ankle monitor. So, you know, of course, people's already looking at me, you know, like I'm a big criminal or something like that, you know. It just the weekends, I stayed home. Of course, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to church. My family is it's very big in church. I couldn't go to choir practice. I couldn't sing on the choir. Um, my you know, again, I had to stay at my aunt's house. So if, you know, they didn't have money back then. So if the what if the power went off, you know, if she couldn't afford her power or something like that, would they come get me? um I was afraid to get it wet in the shower because I, you know, it's just a whole fear of uncertainty. For me, like I said, I wasn't properly educated, and I don't know if there is a such thing of being properly educated. You know, it was just be here at this time. If you're not, this is what's going to happen, you know, and that's it, you know. And it's, again, you never know if you're going to be believed, you know, what would have happened if I would have made it in late, or the bus was late, or the game ran over at school, or, you know, just anything. My mom, you know, she didn't have a car at the time. Like I said, we didn't even have a house phone, so I had to stay at my aunt's house, you know. But at 15, um you know, somebody, you know, we weren't the kids that were left at home, you know, for a long time. So it's like somebody always had to be there, or couldn't, you know, everybody tried to have a schedule so somebody can be home with me, you know, to make sure that I'm okay. Um, or if the monitor go off and somebody's not home with me, you know, somebody come, my aunt coming home, or one of my cousins coming home, and I'm not there, you know, would they be alerted? Would they, how would they know? You know, we didn't have cell phones back then. So I would say my day-to-day life was in fear. I was afraid. Um, of course, would I prefer to be on an ankle monitor than in jail? Yes, but then no. Because, you know, at the end of the day, am I really, you know, out here, you know, really living life? You know, I'm constantly in fear. At least if I was inside, I wouldn't be in fear of, you know, being surrounded by the police accidentally, or, you know, just I just never knew what to think. I never knew what to do. I never knew what would happen. I never knew what could happen. Just fear. At 15, I had other stuff, you know, I'm trying to figure myself out. You know, I'm already feeling like I'm a terrible person because I got into a disagreement with someone at school that escalated into something that no adult explained to me. You know, nobody in court explained to me. It was whatever happened in court happened in court. I can't tell you who the judge was. I can't tell you if I had a public defender. I can't tell you nothing other than the fact that I was told that I need to be in this place to get this ankle monitor on me, and I need to be in the house at this time. Yes, you can do this, you can do that. But if you're not in at this time, the police is going to show up no matter where you are. If you're in a car, if you're on a bus, if you walk in, if you're at school, whatever, you know. And of course, people stereotype you already. You know, you're just automatically just this awful person. And again, I was fortunate enough for my school officials to know the type of student I am or was, and the type of person, and to speak to my character. But overall, I was still on the monitor. The people that didn't know me didn't know me. They just, of course, keep your kids away from that kid, because I mean, I know she's still able to be at the football games, but why? Why does she have that monitor on? Is she a gang member, or just, I mean, just, I heard things. I heard people say things. I was used to it. So, I just kind of took it on the chin. But I thought about, when I first was approached to do this, I thought about, like, hey, everybody's not tough like me. All kids don't have, the type of personality I have. I'm outgoing. I pretty much try not to allow things to shame me. And I was shamed. I was shamed. I felt, I just felt like the worst person ever. Like, and it scared me straight. I will say that it did scare me straight, but it was still humiliating. And I didn't realize how much it affected me until I participated in my first, conversation about it, and how emotional it made me feel, because I was scared. I was so scared. I didn't, and then too, when we didn't have a phone, we didn't, of course, my mom wasn't thinking at the time. I was like, oh my God, we don't have a phone. So I'm not even going to be able to be on this monitor, and thank God somebody else was in there, was like, do you have a relative that, that you could stay with to have a phone? And, my aunt, of course, but it was like, what if that person wouldn't have been there to even make that suggestion? What would have happened? you know. And to Anthony, with fees and everything, there probably were fees. I have no clue, but I just know we couldn't afford them. So I don't know if my mom, I don't know if she had to do anything. I know my mom told me she did lose her job. um, she lost her job. She was working through a temp agency, and just having to be there, with me, because sometimes, of course, my aunt has her own kids, so sometimes my mom had to come over, and of course she's my mom, so she's gonna come check on me and things. But just the uncertainty, she had to be on standby, and of course her job wasn't understanding that, so we didn't, we didn't have a job anymore. And we were all in constant fear of what will happen with Sheila, what's going to happen. So, yeah, I can't really say too much as far as day to day, other than constant fear. Constant fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Anthony.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess like my day-to-day experience, I would say like that feeling very similar. Like you're always in fear or like concerned if like I said, when I first got it slapped on when I was in the department, sheriff's department, um uh if 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 I had violated my electronic monitoring or whatever and wasn't where I was supposed to be, then they would notify probation, and then probation would notify the court, and then I'll get arrested, blah blah. But I was getting it through the sheriff's department, and like I said, there was a guy there defending himself because the sheriff was telling him, "You were over here when you weren't supposed to be," and he was like, "I haven't left my house." He's like, "I just go to work and come back. That's all I do." Um, so that was when I was getting mine slapped on, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "I gotta go through this." And like I can't even go nowhere. And I don't even before the monitor, I didn't want to go nowhere because I couldn't. I needed help just to get pushed around in a wheelchair anywhere if I wanted to leave. So I wasn't leaving already, and I was like, imagine if they get like some false location of me, and then they come at me like that, and it's like, so I already had that like that that notion as I got mine on, and every day I had to charge it like 2 or 3 times, and if it died. If it died and if it died, was dead for too long, like an hour or two, like they would lose track of me and then I can get in trouble for that. And so I had to constantly like be like, okay, it's been like about 8 hours, I should go charge it again. And I'd have to go literally sit next to the wall because of the charger that plugs into the wall. And I have to sit there while it's on. I can't take it off. So I'm just sitting there for like, and it takes a long time to charge. It took like 2 hours. It takes like 2 hours to fully charge. And so I would just sit there. And while I was getting charged, and then, even, luckily I was able to go out, in the local areas. I didn't want to because I had this big thing on my ankle. And whenever I did go out, I would wear pants, and I was wearing pants and sweats and during a summer like this. And right now I'm dripping hot because in this space that I'm in, I think the AC went out or something, and that summer is hitting me right now, and I'm sweating. And I would wear pants during weather like this just so I could hide this big chunky ankle monitor. So it was embarrassing. It was shameful. That's why I stopped going to physical therapy as well. Physical therapy that I desperately needed. I stopped going because I was so embarrassed and ashamed that I was wearing this thing, and I was just scared of my physical therapist seeing it. So I didn't go. And so those are some of the things that you feel and go through while you're on it. Um, kind of to the point, like comparing it to like jail, for me, is it better than jail? Yes, but we can do much better than electronic monitoring and this overreaching surveillance where now your family is being surveilled and the people you visit or talk to or around are being surveilled. Like that last story I mentioned, when they tracked his audio and now his friend got raided because they heard him and his friend talking, and so they suspected them of something and they raided the house. And so I think it's just showing like the how expansive the surveillance system is, and most people are completely unaware about it, and they're just like, it's criminals and immigrants, doesn't deal with me, they deserve it. And that's the kind of thinking that leads to to mass mass I would just say like another quote that I keep of me is when people talk about, yeah, I don't know, I forgot who the quote is from, but it's about Nazi Germany, and maybe some of y'all heard it, and it's like, first they came for the Jews, then they came for the gays, then they came for the unions, then they came for me. So it's like, and I hope probation and law enforcement is listening to this. I'm not accusing y'all that you're coming after us. Um, but I want you to feel like when there's this kind of imbalance of power and privacy, when there's this much of our privacy being taken and in control of somebody else, like that becomes a very dangerous situation for all of us, including law enforcement, including everyone. Nobody should have this much information on a person. Um, so yeah, that's like the main overarching thing that I always think about, like when I think about my experience and hearing like these other stories about like how other people, families are also have to check in. Families also have their are being surveilled, and community members are being surveilled. And we can do in my particular case it was pretrial, and we could do pretrial services without surveillance, and I, like for myself, I would feel much more comfortable with a community organization, a nonprofit that serves the community, quote unquote, monitoring me, not surveilling me, not tracking me, but just checking in with me and making supporting me as I go through court and doing what I have to do. And just even saying for like post incarceration, like Emmett, like if you're post incarceration, like it would be better served by community rather than like this state entity where it's like there's like this, obviously in the United States, there's a very big disconnect between community and law enforcement, especially communities of color. So I think we have to shift towards community-based services. Uh, we would just have to, and minimize the power of the state and give more of that power to our community members and people we trust. And when people feel like they can trust somebody, they're more likely to do something, So I feel like it would increase court appearances. It would increase whatever it needs to be because they know they have a community there behind them to support them. So yeah.
Thank you, Anthony. Now we have sort of some individual questions for each of you. So I'll go to Emmett first for your question. We've heard experiences with electronic monitoring. And now, Emmett, I'm wondering if you can share more broadly about the harms of EM that you've uncovered through your research and what other states are doing to mitigate or eliminate these harms. And before you answer, just a flag, we are running, I think, a little bit over time. So for this one, you have a little bit less time to answer this question.
Sure. I'll just keep it brief. I will say that I'll say first of all that I think there are a lot of places that are starting to. I think EM is a lot more of a known issue now. I think people are like actually paying attention to it as opposed to a few years ago when it wasn't really on people's radars. And so there are places that are actively incorporating electronic monitoring devices for like pretrial justice, such as in Chicago. Um, in Illinois, for example, when I said that I had 4 hours of movement, 12 hours of movement per week, people coming home and from IDOC now generally have about 12 hours of movement per day. So there have been some moves. Places have done away with, some places have done away with fees. Some of these fees, as Anthony mentioned, can be upwards of $300 a month. I think you can find that. People have been forced into bankruptcy. People have been forced into living in their cars because of these fees. And so there has been some harm reduction that has happened in various places. But what I will say is that you can reduce harm, but harm still happens, right? And if you really want to reduce harm, what you do is actually get rid of you do something different. You move away from the systems that recreate harm in the home and move on to something that's actually new. In terms of the harms that are actually happening out there, there's no end to, they should be called legion because there are many. Um, there, there are financial impacts, the fees, not just the fees, but the way that it actually interferes with you finding and keeping employment. We can think of how, when you look at people who are impacted, a lot of times the service industry or places, jobs that require like flexibility or movement are generally pretty open. But when you have electronic monitoring, you're not able to adjust your schedule in that way. You're not able to go to these places or follow up on interview, all these other things that it sort of interfere with that. In terms of like family issues, you can't uh, you can't pick your kids up from school. You can't take them to school. You can't. People can't. I've talked to people who haven't been able to go to the birth of their own child because they were told that we don't know that the child was yours. Or to go to funerals, or to take their parents to the hospital when they're sick, or to seek medical help themselves. So people calling from the hospital crying, saying, "I have a hole in my face and I'm afraid to get treated because I'm afraid to go to, I'm afraid to go back to jail." So people are being forced into these situations that are impossible decisions to make. Um, when we talk about like some of the financial harms as well, we have to think about that it's not just the person that's being impacted; it's the community that the people are a part of, right? So some of these people who are unable to actually go out there and take care of their financial needs run businesses. These are people who own small businesses who employ people in the community. And when those businesses are damaged by electronic monitoring, it's not just the person that hurts; it's their employees that hurts as well, and their families as well. And so there are all kinds of ways that these things interfere with people's lives and really devastatingly impact them. I'll just leave it like that and close there.
Thank you, Amit. This next question is for you, Sheila. And the current climate around the juvenile justice system suggests that more youth may be placed on electronic monitors in the near future. And I know you've talked a little bit about this in some of your other answers to some of the other questions, but I'm wondering if, based on your experience, what do you think about this possibility that more youth may be placed on monitors in the future?
Well, realistically, if that is something that's being considered, I would suggest changing the style of the monitoring, the monitor, that big ankle monitor. let's face it, kids already have a lot of crap that they deal with, trying to discover who they are, bullying, friends. It's a lot worse than when I was a kid. And I don't personally feel that's a good idea, because I feel that it can further hurt a young person. It can damage their self-esteem. It can, make them isolate themselves from people. It's a constant shame. You already feel bad about, what you've done or what you've been accused of doing. And then to walk around, it's like the scarlet letter, you know, hey, look who sinned today. I just think for youth that's just too much to put on them. And I just don't think it's a good idea. And if it was something that they're just going to do, I would suggest looking into a different type of device. Maybe something that looks like a watch, something that's not so alarming. You know, I just think overall it's a bad idea. But you know, for every bad idea, you can always tweak it to make it make sense and to fit a certain circumstance. You may have people that, look at it, because I've looked at it from both points of view. Like I said earlier, would I prefer to sit inside, or would I prefer to be out, at least, in my own home? But again, in my situation, we didn't have a home phone. I don't know if it's advanced, the technology's advanced and you still need to have a home phone, but how many people have home phones, nowadays? So I don't know how that technology is or how much it has evolved from then. But overall, I just don't think it's a good idea for you, because they go through a lot already in their own identity, and finding out who they are, and being bullied and being talked about and being shamed. And again, the constant fear. It's and anything can happen. It can go off, and it's police gonna surround me, or what's gonna happen. It's just a constant fear. And for that to rest on a child's conscience, or just to who they are, I just don't think that's a good idea. um, I think it causes more harm than good. And some people are really hard on themselves, and they may not be able to recover. Fortunately, I was able to not let that define me. But the youth today is completely different. They're governed by social media, um, and stigmatisms that are placed on them that wasn't when I was younger. So for this generation, I would give a hard pass, hard no, hard no. Thank you.
Sheila. Oh, thank you. So now, Anthony, I have a question for you. And you also touched on this a little bit in one of your last responses, but a common refrain about electronic monitors is that, if anything, they're better than jail. And this might lead judges to wanting to use EM more if they're trying to incarcerate less people. How would you respond to this?
Excuse me. I would say there's alternatives to that, and there's alternatives that also need to be scaled, that are already here. They just need to be scaled. The thing is that the county is not putting effort or priority or the budget towards these alternatives, whether it's for youth or for adults. The youth have the youth development department now. Both at the city level and at the county level. So the county incorporates, 80, what is it, like, how many cities is there? Like 88 cities in the county? Huge county. It's like a country. Um, we, the youth development department, if youth are going through this juvenile justice system, if, you know, whatever, they're arrested, or we're hoping to eliminate youth arrest, but just saying that if they're arrested and they have to go through the court system, they don't need to be on electronic monitoring. Or if they're adjudicated, they still don't need to be on electronic monitoring. There's community-based services, and now there's community-based services that are connected to this new Department of Youth Development. And if, as it scales, there will be more alternatives for young people than going to a juvenile hall or to a camp or electronic monitoring. There's better supportive and developmental services that can be, and that are here, that can be brought to young people, whether it's, you know, pre-adjudication or post-adjudication, doesn't matter. Like, there's a department and a seed that can grow. And I know there's a big fight to like grow that, because I was part of it. I helped develop the Department of Youth Development, and this is our main goal. Secondly, for adults in the criminal justice system, there's also, at least in our county, there's the JCOD, you know, the JCOD department that was also created alongside the Department of Youth Development, that is also can be used for pretrial services and even post conviction services. There's the Department of I'm shooting a blank right now, but we have departments and offices that are already established in LA County that can be scaled and are wanting to be scaled to support people, whether it's young people or adults that are going through the system. And we can eliminate incarceration and mass surveillance of our communities with more supportive and developmental services that people need, you know, because most people that are going through these systems are coming from communities that were already disinvested in, that are already hyper invested with law enforcement. You know, like, you can go back to the LA riots, you can go back to the Watts riots, you can go just recently to the George Floyd riots. I went across the entire country. There's obviously things need to be done differently, and there's seeds, at least in our county, thankfully, there's seeds that are here, and we just need the county to invest in it more, and help scale this, because this can be the alternative that our communities need and that our county needs, you know, because if we protect our communities, we're protecting every other community, you know what I mean? So, yeah, so I kind of went on a tangent. I forgot what the actual question was, but I hope I answered it. But yeah.
Thanks so much, Anthony. You answered it. And now I'll pass it back to Dolores.
Hi, thank you so much, and thank you for all your feedback, Anthony, Sheila, Emmett. You know, all the experiences that you've shared with us. Emmett, when you were sharing about your wife unplugging the monitor, I was like, no. So I can imagine how you felt at that moment. And Sheila, when you spoke about how you like to wear dresses, you know, you were being cute, right? A young girl. But then there was that ankle monitor, and I thought, wow, what does that do for a young girl? Their self-esteem, their self-confidence. You know, I could just really feel everything that you were saying at that moment. And Anthony, I had no idea you were involved in changing the cost to the electronic monitoring. And that's huge right there. I used to say, you know, if I don't pay my Visa card, they're not going to come and arrest me. But if you don't pay your electronic monitoring, you're going to get arrested. You know, and when I think of one time when I was waiting for somebody to get latched on, or however they call it, I was waiting for them at the jail, and the sheriff said we have to tether them still. But if you really let the word resonate with you, tether, tie an animal with a rope or chain so as to restrict its movement. The horse had to be tethered to a post. So, you know, when you think that we use this analogy and this concept for human beings and youth at that, but now enough of me. I was just so involved in everything that you all shared, and so now I want to open it up for Q&A. And Wendy, if you want to take the first caller.
Actually, I think Isabel is going to read some questions, and so please send your questions in the chat, and Janae has access to the chat, and we'll send them to Isabel. Have you received any of those yet, Isabel?
Haven't yet, but my eyes are trained on the chat box. So.
Okay, great. So we do have a couple of call-in users that we could go to if you want to wait for that, or we can just wait a few moments for people to write questions in the chat if they wish to. Janae, have you seen
yeah.
anything in the chat yet?
No, Wendy, not as of yet.
Okay. So Isabel, you want me to call some of the call-in users?
Yeah, let's go to one person on the phone, and then we'll go back and forth.
Great. Okay, so we'll start with call-in user number 2. You need to dial *6 on your phone, and that will unmute you. There we go.
Okay, thank you for recognition. This is Mel Bailey. I've been a reentry advocate for about 25 years now. And two things. One, I'm listening to all the stories, and I've actually had a significant adverse experience with electronic monitoring versus community detention program, with something different for juveniles. I do want to commend all three champions for speaking their stories. It is refreshing to hear them, because there's always a human being on the other end of the situation. So, and I know it's not the easiest thing to come in here and pour your hearts out. So I do want to respectfully thank you for that and show and just identify the appreciation. I also ask, have any of you? Well, I'm sorry, to keep in with that same comment, I personally, professionally would like to connect with you all offline. POC has a way, if I can get their information offline, so that we can help younger individuals, the youth, to avoid even being in the situation where this is even a conversation. I think that's kind of where we're headed towards. And then the last thing is, have any of you ever contacted the courts to have this discussion? Or I know there's not a court oversight commission, but I think it would be advantageous. And I only say that because the courts are the only ones that can order. And I repeat, they are the only ones that can order electronic monitoring, community detention program, at least in my 25-year experience. Probation officers cannot make an order. And so it's very significant that we are having this dialogue with the right people, because I agree with, I believe, young lady's name was Sheila. I clap for her when she talked about the size of the monitors. They are gaudy, and I'll be the first to admit, it would be nice if they were slender or sleeker. But I also, the last thing for sure is, I attended a couple of conferences with ATI, and it was suggested that this is actually better than being detained. And so I don't know. I just think that that's an alternative to incarceration. It is what it is. I think it'd be better served if we have this conversation with the courts, and I would invite you all to connect offline so we can avoid others from having, because I don't know what any of the allegations were that got you there, but no matter what it is, I'm sure it can help others to not have to even be in the same or similar situation. So thank you again for championing your message to everyone, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you for the call. I see we have another caller too.
Sheila has her hand up.
Oh, defer to Sheila. That was just.
Did you get any? Do we have any questions, Isabel?
We don't have any questions just yet. I would quickly like to mention something that was surfaced by Mel's comment, and that is just that the criminal justice program at UCLA is currently conducting a survey about electronic monitoring. And if folks have experience with electronic monitoring, they can complete that survey. I've sent that survey over to Janae, so I think she should be able to share that out broadly to the folks that are with us on the webcast, but also for folks on the phone. To complete that survey, you can go to bit.ly/EM, capital EM, lowercase survey, and then uppercase LA. And that'll also be in the chat. But then otherwise, I'll pass it back, I guess. If there are any other questions over chat from Janae, I'm not seeing them. So Wendy, I'll go back to you for another caller from the phone.
Okay, great. Let's go to Titilayo Rosaki.
Thank you, thank you so much. I do want to name that the chat is disabled, at least for me. So that may be why you're not seeing other people putting their comments in the chat.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Janae, is there a way that we can change that? And then I want to hear what you have to say, Titilayo, but let me just see if we can get that fixed. Janae, do you think there's a way we can change that?
I'm checking right now, Wendy.
Okay, all right, go ahead. Thank you for raising your hand. And please just go ahead and ask your question live if you don't mind. Can you unmute Titilayo again, please, Janae?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't unmute myself for a second there.
Okay, you're good now.
Thank you. But I just wanted to honor Anthony, Emmett, and Sheila so much for your powerful testimony today. I, just got chills all over again, just hearing your experiences, and you all are the experts in your experience, and just want to just commend you all for sharing. And I know it's really difficult. I feel I echo the comments of the past caller who named that judges are truly the crux of the issue here. And so to any judges in the room, I really implore you to take Emmett, Anthony, and Sheila's experiences to heart and know that this is not just one-offs, right? Like this is the day-to-day experiences of folks who you order into electronic monitoring, and really just having that empathy of understanding, would you allow such a device in your home? Would you allow such a device that is able to track not only your movement, but also the audio of what is happening in your home? That is just such an unacceptable breach of privacy, not just for the individual, but as folks have already mentioned, such a widening and effect on communities, right? And knowing that net impact in terms of the neighborhoods that are over policed, that casting of the wide net of surveillance in each home in our communities is just truly unacceptable. And while I understand, Sheila, the thought about like making, the devices smaller, because again, I was really heartbroken by, the shame that you all expressed, and Anthony, your experience not being able to seek the medical attention because of the gaudiness of the device. I do not want a dollar going to these for-profit companies who are profiting from our surveillance and our continued incarceration. And so just continuing to underscore what it is you all uplifted, which is community-based alternatives to incarceration and investments in community care and investments in the systems of support that actually keep our folks safe and help people to not feel surveilled but cared for and reintegrated and loved back into community. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. I can't agree more with how spectacular the stories were shared today, just as Dolores said. We don't have anybody else with their hands up. And do we have any questions in the chat? Oh, actually, we do. Janae, can you promote Ambrose to the panel? Ambrose, along with Isabel and Alicia and Grant and a few others, are some of the advocates who helped us put this event together today. So Ambrose, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Oh, thank you so much. And I am so grateful that the Probation Oversight Commission gave space for these incredible individuals to share their stories tonight. I have a really specific question. And I just want to put it out into the ether. I don't know if anyone here can answer that. And that is, it's my understanding that Corrective Solutions is the company that Los Angeles County contracts with to provide the monitors and also provide the supervision of those who are on electronic monitors. And my question is, what oversight mechanisms does the county have for overseeing Corrective Solutions, since it is not a county department, yet they are tasked with, supervision of people who are going through the criminal legal system? And I think my opinion is that that's inherently problematic, because they are a contracting entity and have a financial incentive in continuing to put people on monitors. And so I just wanted to ask that question. I don't know if anyone has the answer, but I think that this, is the appropriate place to raise such an issue. Thanks.
That's something we can request as the Probation Oversight Commission. We can request the oversight data on that, but I don't think we have that answer right now.
I would agree with Dolores. That's something that at the August 10th meeting, the general open Brown Act Probation Oversight Commission meeting, this will be on the agenda again for the hopes of taking action. And I think requesting data, information about Corrective Solutions, information about the contract is one piece of that. It also plays into what the callers said about the court. One of the Probation Oversight Commission's biggest accomplishments over the last couple of years was a recommendation that was made to the board, but also sent to the court. And it was in fact the court who made the decision to make significant changes to the citation diversion program that greatly impacted so many young people's lives. So it's very possible that there could be a consideration of a similar agenda item at the commission meeting. That's up to Dolores and her fellow commissioners.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there, oh, I see Sheila has her hand up.
Yes, I just have a question just to to Amber Rose, what she was saying. So I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. So the monitoring is done by a contractor, third party. I think that's what she was saying. And if that is so, then what what liability if they're not reporting accurately. Like I was saying, I was afraid that, the thing can go off at any given time. And, it said that I wasn't at school when I was at school. So, what, I work in insurance claims, right? So I deal a lot of legal matters. So, and I have to read insurance policies. And majority of insurance policies, even they come with certain exclusions, especially to contractors. So the state is if anything happens, the state gets sued, everything goes through insurance, everything goes into those claims. So whoever holds that policy may have an exclusion in there to the contractors that, and I know I'm taking this a little bit out for you guys, but this is what I do for a living. And I deal with different large entities. And there are certain exclusions to contractors. So if this device is contracted out and the courts and whoever, the powers that be are not monitoring this, and say, for instance, a glitch happens, typically contractors aren't held liable. There's exclusions in everybody's policy for contractors. And so who would be held liable if something happens? You can't hold the contractors liable, because I can guarantee you, if anybody looked into whatever policies, there's an exclusion for contractors. I can 100% guarantee there is. So again, who would be held liable if these contractors, whoever's supposed to be monitoring this, the people that are on this, if they mess up? or if they, leak somebody's information out that shouldn't be, sent out, like who would then be held responsible for this? So that's, I'm sorry. And I know, like I said, this is just me coming back into my, my frame of mind, thinking legally, if something was to happen, who's held liable for this? You can't really hold the contractors. They're contracted. There's nothing to hold them responsible if they screw up.
Oh, it's okay. I just want to add. So, one of the things that there's a couple of things. One is that, as Anthony was mentioning about the listening on conversations, like a lot of these contracts for electronic monitoring companies have provisions for two-way communication. So that's something you might want to look at as well. But when you're talking about the contracts, this is actually not too unusual. So you do see this in many places where electronic monitoring companies, the contracts are specifically to provide these services, and the county essentially washes its hands of the entire thing. And so people are subjected to like real world consequences with very, very little oversight. And so you can look at places, I think Alameda County had a lawsuit recently, or a couple of years back, almost for this exact thing, where people were being charged. They were supposed to be reviewed for ability to pay and weren't being doing that. And that wasn't happening as well, right? So this has happened in a few different places, and it's something you may want to consider.
Thank you so much, Sheila and Emmett, for your comments and your feedback on that question. And that's exactly why we're here tonight, right? That's exactly why we're having this dialogue and this platform, so that we can open up to ideas and discussions and questions, and look how we can start getting these answers, and how we can create change that will work for everyone. And so with that, I would really like to thank everybody, our speakers especially, lift them up, and our participants that stayed on this call and participated in this. Please join us for our next virtual town hall on Tuesday, August 1st at 2 p.m. We'll be having a discussion about our recent inspections at the probation camps. And our next official probation oversight commissioner meeting is Thursday, August 10th, and it'll be from 9 a.m. to 1, and electronic monitoring will be on the agenda. So we will carry on this conversation. And please feel free to email us with any questions at info@poc.lacounty.gov, and follow us on social media for more information, and stay engaged with the Probation Oversight Commission. Thank you all for being here with us tonight, and look forward to the next conversation. Good night.